Garmin Guru. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a route from a track. So if you're out on your motorcycle or in your car or perhaps on your bicycle or doing another activity and you've got your Garmin GPS switched on, as you move along it will track the route that you're doing. So the scenario we're going to use today is that I've been out with my motorcycle club, which is actually where this footage was shot from. We did a fantastic route around Essex, and now that I've got home I want to save that track and turn it into a route so I can ride it again on my own, or share it on the internet, or share it amongst other members of the club. So the first thing we need to do is to fire up BaseCamp. Once BaseCamp is loaded, the next thing I need to do is plug my Garmin Zumo into the computer. And once that's connected and loaded up, I need to find the track that I did that day. So what I'll do is I'll just dismiss this tooltip first at the top there and click across to the internal storage on my Garmin Zumo and scroll down to the bottom. Now to find the appropriate track, just try and remember the time you set off and the date, and you'll be able to find it quite easily. So I right click on that and click show on the map, and that's the route we did that Sunday. Fantastic route through Essex. So I'm going to right click on that and click copy. Then up at the top I click on my collection, right click on that and click new list. So I'm going to create a new list for this example. I'm going to rename the list, and I'm going to rename it to Essex Ride Out and put the date that we did the ride, so I've got it for future reference. So once I've renamed the list, I right click and then click paste, and that pastes the track into there. So the first thing I'm going to do is just change the color of the track so it's easier to see when we make changes. So I'm going to change that to green. Now, if I'm satisfied with the track as it is and think it's perfect, I don't want to make any changes, then I can select the activity profile I want to use. So in this instance, I'm going to choose driving, because driving doesn't have any specific route avoidances. And in this scenario, we don't want the software to avoid any of the roads we've already taken. We just want to follow those. So if I was to choose motorcycling, it might avoid some of the routes because the preference is to avoid things like highways, but that's not what we want in this scenario. So choose driving, double click on the track and click create route. Then that creates the route. Now this can take some time because it's been created from thousands and thousands of points, because the Garmin logs a GPS point every few seconds. So I've sped that up just for the sake of the video. So there we go. Next thing I'm going to do is change the color of the route to red so it's easy to distinguish between the track, and then rename it. So there we go. There's our riding route essentially ready to go. So from here, we can either send it to our Garmin device by right-clicking Send To and then send it to our Zumo. Or we can click on the File menu and click Export and export the list to our computer as a GPX file, and from there share it on our OneDrive using Dropbox, or even email it around to our peers. It's important to note that when you export a list, it exports all of those things in that list. So it'll export the track and also those two waypoints. So my advice would be to delete everything you don't want to be shared on the internet, and particularly the track, because that contains the speed you were doing at the time. So that's fine if that initial route was perfect, but the route we've actually done here, I want to make some changes to before I share on the internet. In particular, I want to remove this bottom section here, which shows you exactly how to get to my house, because I don't want people turning up at my house. And secondly, at the top here, if we look at closely and zoom in on that, that's actually a mistake we made. So we took a wrong turn and went down this road, and then everybody turned around again. So I want to remove some of those things. So the first thing I'm going to do is display the editing tools. So in order to do that, I click on the View menu and click on Toolbars and select Edit Features. And that displays this new toolbar on the left. So I'm going to drag that over and position it on the right. So that gives us 4 new editing tools, those being Insert Point, Move Point, Erase Point, and Divide the Route. So you'd think now, if I clicked on the erase, I would be able to start erasing points from the route we've created. But because of the way the software works, if I click on that like that, it just removes the whole route pretty much. So we're going to have to find an alternative method. So what I'm going to do is just delete that route, and we're going to start again from the track. So I'm going to double click on the track. And next I'm going to change the activity profile to direct. The reason I'm changing it to direct is when I change it to direct and go to calculate a route, it lets me select the number of points I want to use. So if I click create route with the option there to uncheck the automatic number of points and specify a number of points ourselves. So a system I've found that works quite well is if you use the same number of miles or kilometers, if you're working in kilometers, for the route, the entire route, as your number of points, that works out to a manageable number. So my route was 265 miles, so I've specified 265 points. So from there, I click OK, and it will calculate the route. So I'm going to change the color of the route to red so we can distinguish it from the track, and now we can begin editing. So the first thing I'm going to do is fix that section at the top where we made a wrong turn. So I can zoom in on that and click on the erase tool. And now I can start deleting the GPS points from the section where we went wrong. So if I delete all of these points to either side of that wrong turn, then when we recalculate the route, it will avoid that. Now, when we're working with the route in a direct profile, it also means we can delete points without it having to recalculate each time. If we use a profile such as driving or motorcycling, each time we delete a point, it will recalculate the route. So the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is remove the bottom section, which shows you how to get to my house. So I could just manually delete the points as before, but there is a slightly quicker way, and that's to choose the divide tool. This tool will divide the route into two parts. So you see here we've got two sections, a dark section and a light section, and that shows where the divide is. So you have to experiment with this a little bit to get to the right part of the route if you like, but as you can see there, we've got the dark section, which is the main route, and the light section, which is the early part. So if I click there, it will divide the route. It asks us here if we want both routes to share one of the GPS points, and I've clicked yes because that's fine. So what I've done is I've gone to roughly where the route should start, so where the roads got interesting, and click the divide. So now I have two routes. I've got this initial piece, which was where I rode up from my house, and the main route. So I'm going to click the route from my house and just delete that, and that leaves us with the main route remaining. So finally, I need to remove the final section, which shows you how to get back to my house, so that we've just got the riding route. So you see if I hover over it there, we've got the dark section and the light section. So round about here was where we all got back onto the A1 and the group sort of dispersed, if you like. So that was the end of the interesting part of riding. So if I zoom in onto that and go back to the divide tool, I can pick the exact point where I want to have the end of the route. So round about there, just before we got onto the A1, again, click yes. I don't mind if both routes share that same GPS point. And now if I zoom back out, so right click on there and click show on map, you see we've got the main route there, the riding route. And if I select on the left, you can see the route that navigates back to my house. So I'm going to delete that route, and then we're just left with the main route. So if I right click on that and click show on map, we can see it in its entirety. So the next thing we need to do is recalculate the route with the correct activity profile. So I'm going to double click on it and change the activity profile from direct to driving. The reason I'm choosing driving and not motorcycling is because driving has less route avoidances, so therefore it's more likely to follow the track accurately. So there we are. So there's our route essentially ready to go. So finally, I'm going to rename the route. So double click on it and change the title up here to Essex Ride Out Route 2, and then close. Now finally, a bit of housekeeping before I would export this list. I'm going to delete the track because that contains all the speed information. And I'm also going to delete those two waypoints because they're very close to my house. So once those are gone, I can now export the list ready to be shared. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how you'd export it to your Garmin device. So right click, click send to, and then choose your device from the list and click OK. And finally, if you were going to export as before, we click File, Export, choose the list, and then we can export it to our computer and from there share on OneDrive or Dropbox or via email. So finally, I'm going to show you how to invert the route. So perhaps you might want to ride it backwards. So to do that, you double click on the route. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color to yellow because the route direction arrows are red. So it'll be easier to distinguish this. So then you click on invert. And if you look closely at those little red arrows, they're now pointing in the opposite direction, which shows that the route is now inversed. So that's how to create a route from a track, how to manipulate that route, and also how to invert it should you wish. Thanks for watching, and remember to like, share, and subscribe.